All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we are going to do today is we're going to take all the mystery and the magic out of receptacles and switches. By receptacles and switches, I mean these right here. Okay, just your typical receptacle right here. Obviously goes in a box, which is inside of your wall. All right, there's the wires that hook to it. So if you're looking at your wall, this is what you would see, just basically like this. So now just a quick review on a receptacle. Most all the newer ones, you've got colored screws on the sides, okay? So you got a green screw right here, which is always your ground. Some greens are brighter than others. This one is not too bright, but anyway, you can see it's green. You can see these screws are kind of silver looking or white. So that's where your neutral is going to go. Your white wire always goes to these white screws. And these screws are colored, so your colored wire is always going to go here. It could be a red wire, could be a blue wire, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a black wire. And so just remember the colored screws, the brass colored screws go on the colored wire. So that's pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of these apart and see what's on the inside. Also, quick review, the big ground hole is a ground wire. The little short one is your hot. This will be your hot right here, okay? And then this is going to be your neutral. You can basically see white wire, white screws, big slot, neutral, same this side. But when you take it apart, you'll see. Now, before we get into that, let's take a look at this up here. Where's my deal? Right here. Okay. Electrical symbols on a blueprint. By the way, if you don't know what a blueprint is, this is a blueprint. Basically just shows you how to wire stuff up. Well, I take that back. It shows you where all the devices go, your lights and your plugs, and kind of how the circuits are run. So this would be a blueprint, but an actual wiring diagram would be like that right there. That would be a wiring diagram. It shows you where all the connections are. That's just for the grounds, but it's the same principle. The difference between a wiring diagram and a blueprint or just a print is the print will show like, oh, you get a light here, a plug here, and then all these plugs work, hooked together. But a wiring diagram will show you where every single wire hooks, where it terminates. Actually, that's a schematic. An actual wiring diagram would show you schematic is going to be just the hot wires. It doesn't really show you neutrals too much. The wiring diagram is going to, just remember a blueprint, just kind of shows you where stuff is. If you get a wiring diagram or a schematic, that actually shows you where all the wires go and how everything operates. So for instance, on a blueprint, that's a symbol for a switch. So if you see this on a blueprint, you know that you got to install a switch there. And that might go over, to a light like so. But it doesn't tell you how to hook anything up. Where on a wiring schematic or a wiring diagram, you would have, this would be your switch right here. There would be the symbol for the switch. And in this case, probably as good a symbol as any for a little light bulb. So, and then you probably a little circuit breaker. Actually, that's the start of a ladder diagram, but I don't want to get too complicated. Just remember, this is a symbol for a switch on a blueprint. This is a symbol for a switch on a wiring schematic or a wiring diagram. Now, symbol for this guy, whoops, symbol for this guy right here, a receptacle. Everybody calls these plugs. Technically, it's not a plug. This would be a plug. This would be a male plug, and obviously a female would be the innie and the male is the outie. You guys should know that. So this would be a plug, and this would be a receptacle. A receptacle receives the plug. So anyway, so the symbol for a receptacle is going to be this right here. All right. You don't really see receptacles on wiring diagrams too much, but if you do, they'll draw it in there like so. All right, let's take a look at some of this stuff. I got some stuff broke apart so we can look at it right away. So let me go over to this right here. Hopefully it'll focus. Yep. All right. All right, here we go. Oh, what should we do first? The receptacle or the switch? We'll do the receptacle. Okay. Now, this is your typical receptacle again, neutral, ground, hots. I broke this apart with a screwdriver, and so you don't get to enjoy that. I already did that already for you. Anyway, I wonder if I should turn a light on here. Let's see, where is the stinking light? See if this works better. Get too much glare. Ooh, that's way too much. That'll work, huh? That work? Okay, so if you break this front part off, okay, you can bust this off like I did because it's glued together. This will be just your little faceplate on there. This has no electrical metal function whatsoever. What this does is this protects you from the electrical components, because if you look right here, all the electrical components are here, and I can still plug this plug into the receptacle. So there you go, you know. So it all still works, but the problem is you obviously can't have it like this, because you and everybody else get electrocuted because you got live exposed parts. So this just protects you from getting electrocuted. It also helps guide the plug in and everything else, and holds the faceplate on. But so that's just the cover right there. So the function of the cover is to protect you from energized parts. Now, the next thing that we'll see right here, you see this big piece of metal. This is, the reason they put that on there is you need some way, let me do this without this thing falling apart. You need some way to hold your receptacle in the wall, right? So it would screw, they got little screws that go right here and right here. So you guys kind of get that. You kind of get the idea. Now, this is important, very important. Anytime you have any metal on an appliance, on a device, anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a big giant electrical service, a cabinet, a refrigerator, a washer, or dryer, or a little plug or a little receptacle like this right here. See, I call it a plug even too. The point is, anytime, 100% of the time, unless you get into some weird computer stuff, but 100% of the time, all your metal pieces have to be grounded, okay? So there's your ground wire, obviously, that bare one goes to the green screw. If you look, it goes, hooks to this piece of metal. Now let's pull this little piece of metal off of here. I can get it off. You can see that's all it is. Now, these little holes right here, this is where your ground's going to go in. So you can see right there, you can see that the little ground, this little your ground prong is in this little spring-loaded hole, and which makes contact with this metal, makes contact with this screw, which goes on your ground wire, which goes all the way back to the panel. So there you go. You can see how that hooks in there. All right. And if you look real close, you can see the little, where's my pencil, my pointer, whatever. You can see the little springy things right there. This is just spring tension. All right. Now, speaking of spring tension, these other prongs, they're held in by spring tension too inside this receptacle. Now, that is one of the ways a receptacle can go bad, is these springs in here, they get hot or something, they lose their springiness and doesn't hold your receptacle in. And then it can kind of fall out or make a loose connection. If a connection is loose, it will create heat, okay? If it creates heat, it can cause a fire. It'll probably create more corrosion and more looseness. It's just it's a downhill. Once it starts getting hot, it's all over with. So, and the problem with stuff getting hot is a typical circuit breaker is not going to trip because it's not a dead short. So what's going to happen is it'll just sit there and heat up like a toaster wire. Not that these would, but they'll catch on fire. Now, that's what these boxes are made to do. They're made to shrink and put the fire out if the fire gets in here, but that's another story. So let's go back to our receptacle. So again, over here we have our neutral side over here. And so you can break this little piece and make two circuits, but we'll go over that later on. I just want to let you know that it's there. So the little spring thing I was telling you about is right, well, I can show it to you like this. Is right here. So let's see, is a good way. Here you can see it. So there's a little spring. Now in this little spring, this is the part that this goes into, okay? So there's your neutral, and there's your plug. That's what these little holes are for, is to help hold the receptacle in, because these little clips will kind of, if you push it all the way in there, they'll kind of catch. You can kind of see it. Let me get this out of the way. You can kind of see how it drops in that hole, and that'll help hold that receptacle in. So there you are. And the hot side is no different. It's just the same thing on the opposite side. Obviously they got these barriers in here so that your hot and neutral can't touch and short out. Again, this little plastic thing here, it just holds everything into place. It doesn't do anything other than that. However, I do want to show you guys something now that I just happened to think about it. So if you notice on the back of this, there's these little teeny holes. So this is made to stab a wire in. A lot of your houses, probably most houses nowadays, because it's all about speed. Instead of stripping it and putting it around a wire, I'm putting your wire around the screw just like this. You can see where that wire is wrapped around that screw and tightened down. Now I'm an old guy, and this is the right way to do it. If you're wiring your own house for yourself or for a friend or a family member or whatever, this is how you do it. You put it under the screw. You just basically, I don't know if I should show you that real quick. Anyway, you take it and bend yourself a little loop on there like so, okay? And then you back your screw out and you slip it on there. Whoop, I'm going backwards because I can't see that plug. You slip it on there like so. And you can see that takes a little bit longer. You got to bend your loop and do all that. And actually, you tighten it down more than that. You always put your wire on the same way the screw goes when you tighten it. That way, it sucks the wire in instead of pushes it out. So, but I didn't really mean to show you all that. We're more like talking about receptacles right now. What's on the inside? We're taking the mystery and the magic away. So here is, this is what I wanted to, sorry, I got sidetracked. I wanted to show you about the stab lock part. So if you, plug, you can stab these in these little holes like so, all right? And if you're working for somebody, wiring houses, this is what they're gonna expect you to do. Stab these things in because it's super fast. All you got to do, I mean, that's a whole lot faster. All you got to do is, you strip your wires. That's it. And then you stab it in and you're done. Now, the reason I tell you don't use these is because these are notorious, or all the time, they will get loose and have a bad connection. Obviously, all my friends know I'm an electrician, been an electrician my whole life, and that is the #1 thing, even when I was doing service work, for houses. That's like the #1, oh, this plug quit working, this circuit quit working, the lights quit working, and it's all, at 99% of the time, it's because one of these stab lock deals loosened up over time. And I'll show you on the back here. So this is what you're stabbing in right here. This part here, whoop, instead of putting it under the screw here, you would stab it in right. You can kind of see it. You kind of see it right in there. Anyway, I'll just put it in here and I'll show you, like, if the plastic was here. There you go. So that's all that's holding that right there, instead of putting it under a screw. Okay. So this is why these things go bad, because they're not much holding it. Now, if you notice on the back of here, if you ever got to take one of these off, like I can pull on it and it's not going to come off. I mean, it will not come out. If you pull on it hard enough, it will. But that's not, you don't have to worry about it coming out. You have to worry about it making a good connection. And there's really not that much material in making a connection right there. There's just a little tiny thin piece. But anyway, my point is, if you ever want to take one of these out, if you look on the back of here, that little square hole right there, your wire is going to go in here like so. And if you ever want to take it out, then you get a little screwdriver. And I don't have a little screwdriver here. I don't even think a wire will fit in there. They should make these big enough for a wire to fit in, if you ask me, because not everybody's always got that tiny of a screwdriver to carry around. But you would push it in this square hole right here. And what it'll do is it'll release that spring, and then you have to push that in at the same time you pull this out. And all you're doing is this little spring right here. You're just pushing that little spring back. You can see it. Yeah, there you go. You're just pushing that little spring back, it opens it up, and you can pull the wire out because your little screwdriver's coming in from right there, pushing on it, right there. For instance, let me show you. I put that in there. Let's say I put a screwdriver through that hole, and then you can see it opens, falls right out. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your receptacle. This is kind of what it would look like, totally naked with no plastic, nothing to hold anything together. If I can keep it on here. So there'd be your hot wire hooked on there. That would be your ground hooked in there, and then our neutral hook right here. There we go. Here we go. There it is, right before your very eyes. There is a, whoops, receptacle in its natural habitat. I can keep everything plugged on there. Yeah, you get the idea. Now this has got to be a challenge for me here. Come on, stay on there. So you can see this whole thing is just held together by spring tension. I wonder if I turned on the slide, if it'll be better over here. That more better? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Trying to eliminate the glare. So anyway, there's all you need to know about receptacles right there. And really the only way for a receptacle to go bad mainly is poor connections in here. These little hooks in here, these little springs, these clamps, where it slips on, this little piece will lose its spring tension, get hot or corroded, and that, you know, you're not going to fix it, you're going to throw the receptacle away. Or if somebody stabs, you know, wire in the back, that little connection, you know, that can get bad. But yeah, you don't, if a receptacle will not stay in by itself, it has to have so much spring tension. That plug won't stay in by itself, it's bad. I wouldn't even use it. But that is basically right there the setup you got inside of a receptacle. And you just plug into there. All right. So you're going to have your hot, your ground, and your neutral. So now let's take a quick look at a switch. I don't want this video to go too long. I don't even know how much time we're on here. I have no idea. Anyway, so I drilled these rivets out on this one. So I can open it up. First thing I want you to notice is we have the metal piece on this switch. Look, we have a ground screw. Has to be grounded. Anything metal on anything has to be grounded. So your ground wire would go on there, like so. So let me open this thing up. I drilled these rivets out earlier. Some of them are glued together. The older or the better ones got little rivets. So first thing is, look, there's that piece of metal. This doesn't have a ground connection on it because it's just a switch. I mean, it doesn't have a ground connection in, like it connects to a plug or anything, because you're not connecting anything to this. This is just your switch. But you still have to ground it because this piece is metal. If it's metal, it has to be grounded. So again, and what this does obviously is just it holds your switch in your box like so. And you got two little screws that go there and there. So that's the function of the little piece of metal. Now, if you notice, this is nice and quiet. And it doesn't really work real good right now because it's halfway in, halfway out. My point is there's if you hold it in there, or you can kind of feel there's some spring tension. It isn't all nice and loose. So, you know what? Before I open this up, I want to talk to you about this. Every switch, you're going to have at least 2 screws on it because you're breaking a circuit, okay? So what I want to do is I want to show you real quick something on the board. Okay, you have a switch like you have up here, like this guy right here. You're going to have your wire that comes from your breaker that feeds the switch, all right? This is going to be your hot wire, okay? That'll be your hot wire. The one that leaves your switch and goes to your light, this is going to be your switch leg. All right? So, some people, not a lot, but some people might refer to this as your line. And this would be your load. But hot and switch leg is mainly residential. You start getting into big giant switches, you'll have your line and your load. The important thing I want you to realize is your hot or your line will always come into the top of your switch. I don't care what kind of switch it is. Rare occasions, it doesn't seem to work out that way, but even people wiring houses, well, they don't always pay attention to it, but they should. Your line or your hot should always come in on the top of your switch. So now I'm sure you may know this, but your switches are made so when the handle is pointing down, well, pointing down, this is up, down. When the switch is in the down position, your light is off. Unless it's a 3 or 4-way switch, but we're not going into that now. Typical single pole switch, handle down, off, handle up is on. So that tells you I got the handle down, so it means it's off. If I put it like this, the handle would be up to turn it off. You don't want to do that. That'll confuse everybody. So handle down is off, so that means that this is the top of your switch. So if this is the top of your switch, that means your line, well, I don't have any, your line or your hot wire is going to come into the top screw, and then your switch leg or your load is going to come off the bottom and go to your light or whatever it is you're switching. So this would be the top, this would be your hot or your line, and this would be your switch leg or your load. And then obviously your ground, because you got to ground this little piece of metal. All right, so this thing is kind of springy. The reason it's springy is because if you look in here, there's a little spring in there. There it is right there. And that keeps your switch from wanting to stay halfway on and halfway off. It kind of snaps over it all the way on, snaps over it all the way off. But in the old days, switches were pretty loud. You could really hear them snap on and off. So now they decided in today's modern world where they want everything nice and quiet. See, I don't even like quiet cars because you can't hear them run. You don't know what your engine's doing. But anyway, my point is they put little pieces of rubber in here to kind of quiet stuff down. So there's rubber in here, and that'll keep your switch nice and quiet. And on the side of here, they do the same thing as your receptacle. This little plastic piece holds these pieces in place. And if you notice on here, there's a little lever that operates inside here. This little lever right here, one goes into the spring and one operates this. I lost my pencil. Oh, there it is. This operates this little piece of metal right here. I'll push against it. And you can see it's opening and closing. What's it do? There's a little contact right here where you see that little copper button. Right there. You can see I can do it with this pencil. It's hard to see in here. Maybe if I go like this. There we go. You can see how it opens and closes. The light is off, the light is on. The light is off, the light is on. So you're opening the circuit, breaking the circuit, you're closing it. Open it, closing it. Open it, closing it. So let's take these apart so you can see them a little better. So obviously your wires are going to go on your 2 screws. So this will be your hot wire right here on this one. And so this will all be energized. And if you look on the bottom, right there, there's a little contact. Right, you can kind of see that little button on there. The reason they do that, they don't just use, you go, well, the metal will conduct all the metal just has to touch. Yeah, you're right. It would work for a little bit. But they put these little contacts on here because this is a harder type of metal. And it doesn't, every time you open and close a switch, there's a little arc of electricity that shoots across there. Kind of like a spark plug. Not that much, but the point is, if you do that on just regular metal, it'll be like an arc welder, and you'll end up welding the 2 pieces shut. Or they'll get a lot of pitting and corrosion and carbon on there, and they won't make contact. So they use these, there's one on each side, and there's a special metal on here to keep these switches operating a long time without burning up or getting all pitted and carboned up and everything else. That is the main reason these switches go out, is these little things get full of carbon or this welds it together. Usually it's mechanical. It could be something else in here could break. I mean, a guy in, I mean, you could clean the contacts up and make it work, but I mean, you get a new switch for what, 98 cents nowadays. So go get yourself a new switch. Plus, once you take this apart, it avoids the UL listing and yeah, just go get a new switch. Anyway, you kind of see how this works. These are the 2 contacts that you can see. It closes, opens, closes, opens, closes, opens. So I can't think of anything else to tell you about this. I think we're good. What else is there to know? I think that's it. I'm calling it. So, gentlemen, just remember your switch leg and your hot line go in the top. It can be cut hot or line, switch leg or load. Actually goes to the load or whatever it is you're switching. Open, close, that's a symbol. This will be a symbol on the print. All right, gentlemen, peace out, and we'll see you later.